Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stardom Cast, a podcast we talk all things about the fantastic, amazing, and spectacular professional wrestling company that is Stardom. Folks, we do it in a positive and we like to think fun manner. I am your host for this bonus interview. My name is Matt Turner. Folks, I have a very special guest on the other end of the tin can line, Pro Wrestling Illustrated contributor, one Kristen Ashley. Kristen, thanks for taking the time and joining us today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I want to apologize to the viewers that you're not allowed. You can't see my wonderful face, but tech does its thing. So I apologize for not being on camera.
What actually happened is Kristen is a massive fan of John Cena, and she's celebrating John Cena's retirement. So she's full
Yes,
in dun 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 dun. You
yes,
can't
that's it.
you can't see her. You can't
Yes.
see her. Maybe after the John Cena retirement, we'll have her back on where she can show her face.
There you go. There
But
you go.
again, Kristen, thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. This is really special for me because I've been reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated for as far back as I can remember, probably the late '80s when I was a young lad over here in northeastern Pennsylvania. So I'm a massive fan of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and all those after magazines. They basically, folks, for all you youngins out there, they were our internet before the internet. So that's how you got all the scoops of what was going on in Mexico and Japan before tape trading became a thing in the '90s. So this is awesome to have, a writer for the for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. So what we're going to do here, folks, just kind of give you an outline is we're going to talk about the PWI Women's 250. Kristen's going to give us a little peek behind the curtain about like what goes on in the process, what the war room is like. Are people throwing milkshakes at each other, saying no, Sai Kamatani should be number one, not Mercedes Moné? So we're gonna get all that, and then we're just gonna really talk about one of the main reasons why I wanted to have Kristen on is just how dynamite women's professional wrestling has been over the past few years, but especially this year. Obviously, if you've listened to the Stardom Cast before, you know just about how. If you're listening to the Stardom Cast before, you know how great wrestling is, the Joshi scene, whether it's in Stardom, Marigold, Sendai Girls. But I just want to just talk to Kristen because again, she works for Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and just see what the overall buzz is like. What's going on, kind of in the writers' room of just how massive women's professional wrestling is around the horn. But before we get into that, Kristen, I would like to know, I'm a big comic book fan, and I like to
Okay.
know origin stories. So I would like to know your origin story. What got you into professional wrestling? Did you watch it when you were younger? Was there a certain match or a certain wrestler that really caught your attention?
Yeah. Well, my women's wrestling origin story started. I think I was in like seventh grade. I was in junior high, back when The Rock. I'm aging myself, but The Rock and Steve Austin and all of that was really big, and they were the top stars. And my sister, who's 8 years older than me, had said you should watch this with me. And we were visiting Georgia. She lives in Georgia right now, and I did, and I was horrified, as a young girl, to see how women were treated back then. I don't think anyone listening to this would not know what I'm talking about. It was just awful, and so I was immediately turned off by it. My family growing up, they were very pro wrestling. Mr. Wrestling 2 lived behind my grandparents. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we were a wrestling loving family. I was not. I thought, if this is how they treat women, why would I ever watch this? So then I got reintroduced, I think it was 2013, 2014, around there. And it actually was Dean Ambrose or John Moxley who got me back into it. I remember kind of making fun of, I don't remember which pay-per-view it was, but I was making fun of the wrestling. I'd, pop in and do what everyone does. Like, oh, look at this, so fake. Look at this. It's just, theater in the ring, right? And my dad said, why don't you just shut up and sit down and watch a match? And so I did, and he actually got me back into it. And then of course back then, NXT and moving on with the women in that time period especially brought me back into it. Like, okay, it's not perfect, but they're treating them a heck of a lot better.
Okay.
Okay, okay, heck
Hell's
of a
okay.
lot better.
You can use hell. That's okay.
Okay. um, than it was before. And so then it just rolled on, but I still realized how how it wasn't equal, and it's still not incredibly equal for a lot of ways, but it got better. And I thought, okay, well, if they're not treating them like sexual sideshows, then we can at least, well, to that extent anyways, then I can get back into it. And just like any sport, women in it, they go through a lot, and it's never going to be all that equal. So I sort of found my mission in life there. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Who were like some of your favorites? Like you said, you started watching once again in 2013, 2014, which obviously women were treated better. Obviously, regardless of how the women were treated back when you first started watching, the Trishas, the Litas, the Mickey James, the wrestling was still really, really good. Like you go
Yeah.
back into that WrestleMania 2020, that WrestleMania 22 match in Chicago with Mickey James and Trish Stratus, that match still holds up. But
Yes.
obviously the mistreatment of the women was awful to say the least, but they're still fantastic wrestlers. But you came back around 2013, 2014, where there's some of the women wrestlers, whether it was in the States or in Japan or in Mexico, who were some of the women's wrestlers that really caught your eye and was like, wow, they're starting to outshine the men here.
Well, and again, Mickey James, I just adore Mickey James, and it's really interesting when you hear interviews about that time with Trish, and she's the stalker, and the whole Piggy era, and how we still thought this is so terrible, like she was being so terrible treated. And you'll hear her saying, I just wanted to be on TV, and I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted a chance to prove myself in the ring. And you could see that when she was wrestling, she just wanted to show what she had. As far as around that area, I was still being sort of introduced. There wasn't, I mean, there was an NXT, but it hadn't really gotten steam quite yet. It was further down when you see Sasha Banks, the Four Horsewomen, right? And Becky Lynch. It took her a little while to be taken seriously, Becky Lynch, but that really is what got me in. That NXT really showed what women's wrestling could be like, at least in North America. And it introduced us to some wrestlers that came from the Indies, that came from Japan, that came from all over the world, that at that time, unless you were almost trading tapes or, had been doing this for a long time, wouldn't know these women from other promotions. I mean, was it 2013 Stardom started? I mean, it was so hard. Like, unless you were like really, really into wrestling and really, really knew all the stuff, it was hard to watch stuff from across the way.
Yeah, 2011
20,
Stardom started. Yeah, they'll be celebrating their 15th anniversary here in just a
wow.
few months. Because as you know, we're 6 weeks away from the new year, which is
Yeah.
crazy
That's
how
crazy.
time flies. But like with me, I got into tape trading because again, I'm over here in the Northeast, so I'm like two
Okay.
hours away from Philly, where ECW was absolutely massive. It was
Right.
such a culture change, really throughout the United States, but especially here in the Northeast. And when you went to ECW shows, that's when I learned about tape traders and I learned about Japanese wrestling. And that's when I first heard of Hayabusa. And I was like,
Mhm.
what's this? And then I was seeing Misawa and Kawada. I knew who Muda was, again, from the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines. And I would see these names constantly in like the top 10 in the back, but I'd never seen them before. And then you're just watching All Japan in the 90s and like, oh, by the way, there's an All Japan women's. And again, I thought it was just a women's division. And then I would later find out, no, 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 this is a completely different company where it's all women's wrestling. Every match, whether it's 6 matches, 10 matches, it's all women's. And that blew my mind as like a 15, 16-year-old kid. I've been watching wrestling since I've been 3 or 4. I was
Yeah.
like, wait, what? And then you're watching Aja Kong, Minami Toyota,
Yeah.
and Akira Hokuto, and the list goes on and on and on. It's just like, oh wow. And then the whole tape trading thing. And I always tell people, I said, you guys, we have no idea how spoiled we are in professional wrestling. You can literally stream a match live as it's happening from
Yes.
across the world on your phone. I was like, in the 90s, you are waiting 3 to 4 weeks just to watch a Masao versus Kawada match to get it
Yeah.
on a ninth generation VHS tape. You're literally, and half the time you're not even sitting down, you're messing with the tracking on the VCR, and you don't care because it's just like, oh my god, I'm not watching 94, 95. You're watching Duke the Dumpster Drosy, and it's just
Right.
yeah, and RoboCop teaming with Sting.
Yeah.
So
That was a great.
yeah, and at the same time, you're loving it because you're trying to get as much wrestling, and it's just like, wow, this is like looks legit. It's the kind of as real as it is, but
Mhm.
yeah, you're right when you just to kind of dial back a little bit. That NXT with the women coming in, and with Charlotte and Becky and Bailey, and obviously Sasha, now Mercedes Moné, which we're obviously going to talk quite a bit
Yeah.
about on this podcast, and rightfully so. And
Yeah.
then you throw in that like Natalia was already made star, and she was doing a lot
Mhm.
of shows in NXT.
Yeah.
So, and I always say one of, if not the most important women's matches in the history of America is that NXT Brooklyn Takeover match with
Yes.
Bailey and Sasha Banks. That was such a great match. We still talk about it. It's
Yes.
still regarded as one of, if not the greatest women's match on American soil. And that wasn't the main event. The main event of that show was Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor for the
Right.
NXT, which was a great match, but they
Awesome
just,
match, by the way.
yeah,
Yes.
but they couldn't follow it. Even Kevin to this day was just like, we couldn't. Me and Finn looked at each other. You know what I mean? You have Finn Balor, also known as Prince Devitt, who destroyed the New Japan scene, created the Bullet Club. Kevin
Mhm.
Steen was Ring of Honor world champion, like drew them a ton of business. Two of the best wrestlers of all time at that moment, and they couldn't follow that match because of the
Right.
story that they built up and the match they had. Where I think that everybody kind of had your finger on the pulse and was like, wait a minute, the women can be taken seriously on the biggest stage at all. And I always say one of
Yeah.
the many great things about pro wrestling, it's subjective. You can like what you like. Your favorite company can
Right.
be AEW, it could be Stardom, it could be Marigold, it can be TNA. That's up to you. But you can't, the numbers are the numbers. Like you can't deny that WWE, NXT is the biggest wrestling company in the world, and nobody's going to touch them. But when you have a show in Brooklyn, New York, which the New York area has been a hotbed for wrestling for decades and
Mhm.
decades and decades, going back to Bruno Sammartino, Pedro Morales. The birth of Hulk Hogan happened there. You're at a sold out Barclays Center, and the match that everybody remembers to this day and will remember is a match between two women
Yep.
that absolutely rocked it. So I think it was like, it's one thing for them, for the women to crush it on an independent show or somewhere in Japan or something here and there, but to do it in front of 14, 15,000 people, and again, in a big hotbed territory in the
Mhm.
New York area in Brooklyn, that's where I think everybody in WWE were like, wait a minute, we can have the woman start to main event. And we've seen that. And I always say, like, even now with the WWE, that WrestleMania being 2 nights, I always think that the women should main event at least one of those nights. Now we got it with Becky, it was Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda Rousey. And then we got it 2 years later with Mercedes, Sasha, and Bianca Belair. And
Mhm.
obviously the one in Tampa with Mercedes and Bianca absolutely tore it up. But I think that was the match, Kristen, and I'm sure that you'll agree that was that match with Bailey and Sasha Mercedes. That I think that they really put their finger on the pulse and was just like, this is groundbreaking. It was a groundbreaking match that is still being felt today. It was trailblazing.
Yeah, and even for me, I mean, granted, I women's wrestling is always great to me, but that was the moment that I went, okay, yeah, the women can go. And when they let them go, they really go. And so and I think that was I mean, I remember sitting down with my dad and my brother watching that, and even they like couldn't shut up about how great it is. And not that not that they're like sexist by any means, but the conversation wasn't Finn Balor and Kevin Owens. It was the women's match. And also during that time, the story was really great. Mercedes was the heel, right? And Bailey was this baby face. And behind the scenes, the story was, look, 3 of the 4 horsewomen are getting called up. What about Bailey? And that was also the story. And so you got these fans right around that time, a little bit after, obviously, that people were really involved in this and not just, oh, look at these pretty women, or they weren't even being necessarily sold as that. It was more like they were athletes. And there's a lot of contention about Charlotte Flair and that whole situation, but they were being seen as athletes. And that's one of the first times I think that was the focus, and not, oh, look how they're fighting over a guy, or what I mean, like the Vince McMahon tall blonde preference. This was something totally different. And you're right, it was talked about. It's still talked about. It's my favorite women's wrestling match, period. Yeah.
That was gonna be my last question for you. So now I know that answer. Yeah, I always ask what's your favorite match, your favorite women's match. But yeah, again, you're absolutely right. We're talking about it now. Here
Yeah.
we are, almost in 2026, and again, the women's wrestling that have been blazing a trail, especially these last few years. But that is one that you definitely point your finger on. It was just like, Yeah, that's the one to go to. That's the one to go to. Now, you said that your brother and your dad, um, they're the ones watching wrestling with you. Did your dad grow up watching wrestling?
He did, and then he stopped for a while. So he did watch. I mean, gosh, I don't even. Could you watch in the 80s? Could you even watch? But he did, he knew who Mr. Wrestling 2 was. They were my dad grew up in Conyers and Decatur, Georgia, which is also this hotbed for wrestling down there in
Sure.
Georgia. And so he grew up watching them. He of course grew up watching, Sting, you're like Sting, and Ric Flair, and he was really into the pre WWF, I guess, WWE era. And then he stopped for a while. He watched up until the aggression era, and then he stopped for a while, just because he had 5 kids, I think. And then he,
That'll do
around
it.
2013, he started up again, and now he's not watching it as much. In fact, I tried to I tried to get him to watch an AW show once, because I said, Dad, look, Jericho's in it. Dean Ambrose is in it, right? Cody Rhodes, all these people who had previously been in WWE. I'm like, Dad, you got to watch this. It's like really, it's all the people that you like, and it's different presentation. And he couldn't get over Jungle Boy. Like he could that was all he could focus on, was like Jungle Boy. Like he couldn't get over it. Knowing, the Luke Perry's son, even, he just couldn't get over it. And so I said, all right, well, we're not doing this anymore, Dad. So I think occasionally he might peek in on a WrestleMania or something, but there are a lot of people on that roster now that he would not know. Yeah.
The reason why I asked that is my dad, he started watching wrestling in the 70s, and about a decade before I was born in the 80s. He started watching wrestling in the 70s when it was like
Mm,
Bruno and Superstar Billy Graham, and he only watches really WWE because that's all that we really had in the Northeast.
right.
He watched a little WCW back in, because we used to have like the Nitro and Raw parties at our house, or we'd always have the pay-per-view parties, because in the 90s you would have WWE would have a pay-per-view, WCW would have a pay-per-view, and ECW would have every other month. So he kind of had his finger on the pulse there, but he mainly just watches WWE. Every now and again, he'll watch AEW, but that's just what he's been watching since, 50 years. So it was
Right.
about 2 years ago. I was over my parents' house, and he's like, "Man, have you been watching WWE?" I said, "Well, I got the Japanese stuff going in AEW, but I'm watching some things here or there." And he's like, "The women are way better than the men." And again, this is a guy that grew up watching Bruno Sammartino, Superstar
Right.
Billy Graham. And he's like, they are way better than the men. And he really doesn't know what I cover. At that point, he didn't really know what I covered on the podcast. He just knows that, like, oh, my
Yeah.
son does a podcast. He's
Yeah.
like, and the best women's wrestlers are that Kyrie and that EO. And I was like, oh, Dad, I have stuff to show you.
You're
And
like, hold on, Dad, crack your
yeah.
fingers.
Yeah, I had and it was funny because it just happened. I forget what we were over there for, but it was in the summer, and it was the Money in the Bank ladder match that Chelsea Green won, and that's the one where Io took like a tombstone off the ladder or something.
Mhm.
So we were like on his back deck. We were having like a barbecue or something, having a beer, and I said, "Dad, let's just go in. We'll go on Peacock." I said, "I'll log in my information." I said, "We'll watch the women's ladder match," and it was like he almost jumped out of his chair, and I said, "Oh, wait till the next time you come up here." So
Just wait.
it's so funny. So my parents come in. My mom gravitates towards my wife. They're in the kitchen talking about cooking, and because they love to cook, and my wife is just an amazing cook. And I get my dad a beer. I said, "Dad, sit down. Your son's got something to show you." So the first thing I showed him was a Zumi and Starlight Kid from 2022 for the high speed championship,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I thought that he was going to have to pick up his jaw off the floor.
I
So he's
bet.
like, "That was absolutely amazing." I said, "Let me show you something else." So then I went to All-Star Grand Queendom last year,
Mm,
Mayu versus Sari for the
yeah.
IWGP Women's Championship. He gets done watching that, and he goes, "The men in WWE are twice the size of those two girls,
Oh,
and they hit each other so much harder than the men." And then afterwards, and again, I've been watching Japanese wrestling pretty much nonstop since '96, and they always do the cold spray and the ice packs to sell for the
yeah.
big match, but you really don't see that too much in American wrestling. Ring of Honor, they did bring it in when Ring of Honor really got ahead of steam towards the late 2000s. Then he looked
Mhm.
at me and he goes, "Are those ice packs real?" and the cosplayers are kind of half and half. It's like some of those hits, they really had to hurt.
Yes.
So the fact that my father, who's been a wrestling fan since the 70s, is like, yeah, the women are way better than the men. And I'm like, wait till you see what's going on in the world of Joshi. And then I have to explain to him what that is. And he's like,
Right.
this is what you cover. It's like, sure do. Sure do.
Yeah.
And again, I have a lot of friends of mine that strictly just watch wrestling in the States. And a lot of times they have difficulty watching stuff in Japan because of the language. Like there's
Right.
no commentary on it. We're getting a little bit better with that. Obviously, Walker Stewart's doing a great job with
Yes.
Stardom. Sonny Stu and Tom, Marigold, Sendai Girls and Tokyo Joshi Pro, they have it from time to time. But like I get it, I get it. But it's just like whenever I tell my buddies, you got to see this match, and they're like, "What is this? Is this like AI wrestling?" And it's not just moves; it's the selling, it's the psychology, it's the build up, and everything. Where it's just like, yeah, the women are just absolutely crushing and have been for quite some time. But I mean, you're absolutely right, Chris. And kind of go back what we were just talking about is that match in America that really put everything on the map was
Mhm.
Mercedes and Bailey. Now look what Mercedes is at now. The fact that
Yeah.
she walked out of the company, she bet on herself, she did some stuff in Japan that really helped a lot of stuff that we see it's still getting the ripple effect now that we're seeing in Stardom because a lot of people turned into her stuff in Japan, especially that match with Mayu she had at All-Star Grand Queendom 2023
Mhm.
just to watch that match and like, who's this Micah? Who's this Tam Nakano? Who's this Julia? Mina Shirakawa, wow, she's fantastic. Saya Kamatani, yes, sign me up.
Yes.
Azumi, like it was just like, wait to see the rest of the roster. It's not just one or two people, it's the entire roster. So it just really goes to show that it kind of like takes a village, and it really seems like pro
Mhm.
wrestling, it really is for everybody. So yeah, I still think I think maybe you should show your dad some Stardom. Show him.
Yeah, and I kind of fell on. So when I started writing women's wrestling, it was still really just WWE. This was 2017, and I don't know if you know Dan Reed, but
Sure.
he runs Pro Wrestling Eve, and I kind of became close to him at some point, and then I found out about UK wrestling, and then through that it became Joshi. And I would say, my fiance Warren, he's also on the committee, and he has grown into such a fan for the same reason, and mostly because they, which is pretty well known with Mayu, they do not pull any hits. I mean, at any moment you're like, someone's gonna die in the ring because Mayu, Julia, even sometimes Momo, they don't care, and now of course Julia can't do that, but back in the day, you're like, man, and Sherry too. These kicks to the head, someone's gonna die, and not just them, but you think of other places too. These women are nuts, and it's awesome.
A lot of it, Kristen, is smoke and mirrors.
Oh, really?
It's hitting hard in safe places. It's don't it is a ring,
Wow.
sure, but yeah, it's a lot of it is hitting
Matt, you're
hard.
taking away all the fun for me. And
It's
just kidding.
I'm just want to let you know that it's a little bit dangerous. Like, yeah, I'm sure Julia's not pile driving people through tables on SmackDown
No,
the
no, no,
90s and the 90 seconds that she gets on TV, which still blows
no.
my mind how underused she is. That we could do a whole nother podcast on
Yeah.
that. But there's always danger involved, like no matter what you're doing. Like we just had Sadie Gibbs on the show a week or two ago. And I don't know
Mhm.
if you've ever seen her. She was in AEW for a little bit. She did the UK Indies, but she really was making a name for herself in Sendai Girls. She was wrestling Chiro Hashimoto quite a bit, and they're actually building her up for a feud. And Sadie has a gymnastics background, so she does like the Muda spots, like she does the Sasuke special. She does the Great Muda handstand elbow. She does all that crazy stuff. And she literally hurt herself as she was doing her entrance to the ring, and they said her name. She just jumped off the second rope and put her hands up, and she blew her knee out. So it's
Oh,
crazy with all the stuff that like Azumi does. Like when Azumi does that
oh,
top rope double stomp to the floor, I'm like, there's no give there. Like in the ring, there's a little bit of a give, right? There's
right.
no give on that floor in Cork and Hall. Like
No.
it's a floor. So you're always like, I see her do it. And I'm like, I want to see her do it because it's such a cool spot. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I don't want her to blow out her knee. So the hits land, but there's a certain safety to it. And I always say, like, if your move's a half an inch over to the left, the move looks bad. If the move is a half inch over to the right, you're gonna hurt somebody. But like the
Yeah.
degree of difficulty that these wrestlers, especially the Joshis, do, and the fact that for the most part, like you're gonna have your bumps and bruises, everybody's okay. It's really kind of a miracle. And I apologize, folks. Kristen, my cat somehow got in here, and he is a tornado, so I need to get him out of here. But Kristen, you continue about certain things that you like about the Joshi scene.
Oh, well, one of the things I like about the Joshi scene, whether you can believe it or not, is that there isn't really, maybe it's changed now, but there really wasn't a clear heel, quote unquote, and a clear baby face, quote unquote. That it was sort of not considered. I don't know. Maybe you can correct me or not, Matt, but at least maybe now it's changed, but at least in the past there wasn't such thing as like really heel and face in
It
Joshi.
it was almost like, and I'm so lucky that I got to learn from so many great wrestlers, but I spent a lot of time in Ring of Honor. That's where I was trained at. And I remember the way Ring of Honor was ran. You still had your heels and baby faces, but a lot of it was who's better. Like
Yeah,
we're wrestling for who's better. And you look at like the biggest sports in the world, like in the Super Bowl, it's like, are the Eagles better than the Chiefs? Like who's the better team? It's not like, well, the Eagles quarterback's trying to hit on Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. That would be the pro wrestling angle to it.
yeah,
Nobody would care. It was like who's better. And I don't get me wrong, I like the stories, I like the angles. One of the best angles I saw when I was growing up was that stuff with Hulk and Andre on Piper's Pit. Like as a 5-year-old kid, that blew my mind.
mhm,
So I like a good story, but the thing I like about wrestling is like, hey, who's better? And then when you put a belt on the line, like you see these great matches. And of course, I'm always going to gravitate towards Stardom. I do a Stardom podcast. They are my favorite wrestling company. But like
yeah,
you watch these matches, especially Starlight Kid's run as the Wonder of Stardom champion, where
mhm,
Starlight Kid just getting the dog beat out of her, and she just keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. And it's like, if you look at that, why is she doing that? Because she wants to walk out with the white belt, with the Wonder of Stardom championship. So what
right,
is that doing? It's putting her over, it's putting her opponent over, and it's getting the belt over. So that's the
yeah,
beauty about wrestling is you can get so much over. So yeah, you had your heels, and obviously back in the 80s, you had Dump Matsumoto, who was the big heel. You had
yeah,
the Crush Gals, who were the insanely over baby faces. But most of it was, hey, who's better? Like
yeah,
who is, and then if you throw a story on top of it, that's just the icing on the cake. That's just extra dessert. So but I think that's one of the things that when you look at Japanese wrestling, it's like, and you have very little interference. Like you have very, very
right.
little interference where it's like when you watch American TV and you
Oh,
watching, yeah, you're always getting the, especially in WCW, every single main event and Monday Nitro was ending in a run. And it was very rare you had a straight up wrestling match that went 12 minutes and everything was on the up and up. So it's like you're conditioned to that. And then you watch this where it's just 9 times out of 10, it's you may have something, especially, what Kamatani now, part of hate, you may have somebody pull the leg out once or twice, and that's really about it. But like
right.
that's one of the great things about I love about wrestling. I love every aspect of wrestling, but it's the bell to bell competition. Who wants it most? Who's
Yeah.
better between these two fantastic wrestlers?
And when you talk about that, I immediately think of Sherry and Julia
Oh,
and their
the
feud and
dream.
all the matches they had. And oh my gosh. So I'm ADHD, and I'll tell you, there are a lot of matches I cannot even, if it's like a cage match, forget it, especially if it's like a war game style match. I cannot, I can watch about 3 minutes at a time and then I got to go move and I'll come back. But Sherry and Julia, I couldn't stop looking. I mean, I could not look away. And what did that go? Like almost an hour or something? I mean, that's pretty great for me. I don't remember how long, but it felt really long. Um, there were a couple matches. I can't remember which one I'm talking about here, but the there was a story, right? If I'm wrong, tell me. Sherry's mother, right? That was the story at the end of it, and you're crying with them, and I'm surprised they walked out walking. I mean, it was so deadly.
Kristen, I don't know if you realize you just touched upon 3 stories. So the
Oh, okay.
longer matches that you were talking about are Shuri and Utami because the red belt matches are a
Oh,
half an
okay.
hour. So Shuri and Utami, they went to a 30-minute draw back at the Cinderella finals back in the summer of 2021. This is the
You're
one
right.
that got
Yeah.
picked up by Sports Illustrated. It was all over the media. This helped Stardom really blow up. And then after they went to the 30-minute time limit, Rossy Ogawa, who was the booker and the owner at the time, said, no, we're going to go to an overtime period. And then it ended in 42 minutes in a double knockout.
Right.
And then they had the main event at the very first Dream Queendom, December 29th, 2021, where they're like, listen, we need a winner here. There's no time limit. So I think it went like 35, 36 minutes.
Okay.
Shuri wins the belt. Now we go into the Julia stuff. They had 2 fantastic matches in 2022. World Climax Night 1, where I think it went 26, 27 minutes. Sherry gets the win. Julia wins the 5-star Grand Prix. Now, what had happened was Julie was supposed to win the 5-star Grand Prix the year prior. Julie got injured halfway through. So think about that. You're like, when you're the booker and like, okay, Julia's winning this tournament because we're putting the belt on Julie at the end of the year. Julia gets hurt. What do we do?
Right.
They just happened to catch the month before lightning in a bottle with Utami and Shiri. So they were like, hey, we got this. Everybody's talking about Shiri and Utami, like everybody around the world. It's the first match in Dave Meltzer's star rating to break the 5-star rating
Right.
was Shiri and Utami. So they're like, we'll just have Shiri win it. So imagine halfway through your tournament, knowing you're going to have Julia win, and now you can't because she's injured. So then you have Shiri win it. Sherry wins the belt. They have a monster year in 2022. So now Julie has to wait a year to win the 5-star Grand Prix. She wins the 5-star Grand Prix by defeating Tam Nakano, her big rival. So you have that story there too.
Yeah.
And now we get Sherry versus Julia, the rematch at Dream Queendom 2, where the time limit is 30 minutes. And I remember watching that match live, and as the time is, and Julia's hitting Sherry with every finisher, literally the point where she's borrowing finishers from her first feud in Stardom, which is the late great Hana Kimura. Can't put her away. She's using Micah's finisher because Micah's part of Donald Del Mundo. Micah's right there. She's using Himika's finisher, and because Himika's right there as a second, can't put her away. And now the clock's ticking down. So not only does Julie have to defeat Shuri, now she has to beat the clock because, as you know, if it goes to the time limit draw, the champion retains.
Yes.
So she winds up beating Shuri with like 8 seconds left and wins the belt. So that was really emotional. But going back about Shuri and her mother, Shuri's first title red belt challenge was against Mayu back in 2020. And Shuri's mother just passed. She was either just passed away or she was at the tail end of stage 4 cancer. So there was so much emotion in it. So then when Shuri then wins the 5-star Grand Prix in 2021 against Momo in an absolute must-see match, she's just overcome with emotions because she's just like, I failed last year, but I got the big win here, and I'm going to make sure I cash in on it. So it's like that Shuri had that year-long story that was actually kind of supposed to go to Julia that worked out because then you threw in the Utami stuff. So it's amazing how like you may have set plans for something and sometimes plans go awry and sometimes that's the best thing that happened. Like you really never know. And I guess that's just the beauty of pro wrestling. And it's just the beauty of life. It's like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Well, we'll eventually get there, but the journey is going to be a little bit longer. And sometimes that journey just makes it a little bit sweeter. And then you get all emotion. And then if you're like me, you're a big baby crying at 6 a.m. because that's when you start happening.
Same though. Same. I get the same way. I mean, that was really, I apologize. You know so much more than me, but that whole scenario, all those matches were so emotional. And that's what's great about not just Stardom, but Joshi in general, is that it's so, in the ring is where it matters. Like you said, in the ring, that there's not Japanese wrestling, at least Joshi wise, outside the ring. I talked about this earlier with PWI, was that, there is this language barrier, and there obviously are post-match, post-main event, or even, I guess, post-match period promos. But in the end, it almost doesn't really matter. Like, what is going on in the ring is what really matters, at least to me. And so when you think of Stardom, you don't think of like, oh, that was a really great promo. You think, oh my God, that match, like, how did they not kill each other? And that's the great thing about Joshi, and I will die on this hill that it is the best women's wrestling, in my opinion.
I will be on that hill with you. I will say it's the best wrestling. Period. Don't get me wrong. The men are doing great, but what's going on in the women's wrestling? It's a lot in the States as well. Don't get me wrong, in the States as well.
Yeah,
especially in Joshi, obviously Stardom, Marigold, Sendai Girls, Tokyo Joshi Pro. They're a little bit more on the fun side. I don't know if you watch a lot of Tokyo Joshi Pro.
Yeah, I do a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, they have their serious stuff, like Miyu Yamashita will kick your head off, but then you have some wild, like the DDT Iron Man heavyweight championship, like a pillow won it, and then like a book won it. Like, okay, all right, they do
foul,
they do a good job mixing it in. But like Stardom and the Joshi, they still have like their stories that lead up to it. It's nowhere near involved as the WWE, where it's like promo after promo
Right.
after promo. But the best storytelling that they do is when the bell rings. They
Yeah.
tell their story with action. You get like layers of stories and stories. Like you look at like Sai Kamatani and Azumi, like their 2-match series that they had, at the 5-star Grand Prix where Azumi beats Saya Kamatani and
Yes.
eliminates her. And then it's just like, and I remember after that match was over, everybody, it's a sold out Cork and Hall show. It absolutely blew my mind that Azumi had this great match with Han in like 40 minutes earlier and then has another banger, even a better match with Kamatani. And
Yeah.
everybody's chanting for Azumi. And I'm like, if Azumi doesn't win the 5-star Grand Prix, because usually when you win the 5-star Grand Prix, you parlay that into a championship match at a big show. She
Right.
doesn't win the 5-star Grand Prix. They need to run this back in Cork and Hall. And they did like a month later because everybody
Mhm.
was so invested in Azumi. And there were so many callbacks in that match, literally to the point where Azumi in the 5-star Grand Prix match, she escapes she escapes the Star Crusher, and then pins Kamatani with the double Azumi Sushi. They did it as a falsie in the same exact spot in the ring, and the same
Wow.
fans were right there. And you can go back and watch it in Cork and Hall in that first 2 rows. We're like, I just saw this like 5 weeks ago. This is how she beat it. Why wouldn't it work again? And it makes for great storytelling. And then I remember Zumi like smacking the mat because she was so close to winning the red belt. And then
Yeah.
Starlight Kid, who's out there, is seconding Azumi because they're Neo Genesis. Kids banging on the mat just added for like, it's one thing to watch a great match. And I always say, like, if you go back and watch the Flair versus Steamboat trilogy, and
Yeah.
if you never seen it before, you haven't seen it in a while, and you end on the match in Nashville, the Music City Showdown, it's still a great match, but it means more if you watch the Chi-Town Rumble first, the 2 out of 3 fall in New Orleans, like Clash of the Champions, and then you end there. It's almost like a movie. Like again, I'm a massive comic book fan. Can you watch Avengers Endgame and enjoy it and not see the other films? Sure, but would it
Yeah.
mean more to the story if you watch Iron Man, Captain America, the
Right.
first Avengers, the Hulk, so on and so forth? So it just really captures your attention when you put that much time and love into it as a fan. You get so much more out of it.
I agree.
Kristen, without any further ado, let's get into this PWI list. Let's get into it kind of a little behind the scenes look at how all this goes because I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Again, I've been reading PWI before there was a men's 500, and I'm fully
Oh,
aware of, yes, I'm fully aware of how these things work. So, again, anybody new or anybody that wants to argue a little bit with this list, which is okay as long as you
yeah.
do it, in a nice manner, you can always have a spirited discussion.
Yes.
So how it works for Pro Wrestling Illustrated is for the PWI Women's 250 is we go by in-ring achievement. So your win-loss record means a lot. Friend of
Mhm.
the show, Andy Header, is a massive Azumi fan, and he's like, "How is Azumi not in the top 10?" And I was like, because of her win-loss record.
Yeah.
She lost to Starlight Kid for the white belt. She lost to Sai Kamatani for the red belt. She lost in the finals of the 5-star Grand Prix to Momo Watanabe. Is there 10
Mhm.
wrestlers better in the world than Azumi? Probably not, but the win-loss record means something. Championships, obviously a reason why we have who are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are is because of the championships that they held during the evaluation period. Tournaments won as well. I think Momo Watanabe, I think she definitely moved up a lot in the rank because
Yes.
she won, in my opinion, the most prestigious women's wrestling tournament
Yes.
on the planet. So you're already saying yes. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
I already have my answer. I have 2 answers already. All right,
Yes.
this is great. This is a great interview. I'm enjoying this. So then we have influence, visibility, and prestige. Obviously, when you're on the bigger shows, WWE, AEW, back in the day,
Mhm.
WCW, there's more visibility. That's why a lot of us in the 90s are like, how come Misawa and Kawada are not 1 or 2 or 3? I was like, because Hulk Hogan's wrestling in front of 6 million people every week. That's
Right.
why. Technical ability, obviously, that would be, variety of moves, quality of matches, in-ring storytelling, your competition, your success against the best opponents, and then activity, you have to have a minimum of 10 singles matches total. I think that's why Roman Reigns wasn't on the 500, and a couple years ago why Brock Lesnar wasn't on the 500 either, just because you have to have a certain amount of matches. And the evaluation period, which is always key, because a lot of people when these lists comes out, they think it goes from January to January. It doesn't. The evaluation period started October 1st, 2024, and ended September 30th, 2025. So I am just going to run down the top 10. I'm sure everybody knows, but Mercedes Moné, number 1, numero uno. Like I said before, we were talking about a lot about her. Number 2, Toni Storm. And Toni Storm, as you know, Kristen, she was number 1 last year. So Toni Storm taking the gold medal last year, the silver medal this year. Not a bad coup. Sai Kamatani, number 3. Sai Kamatani back in 2022 was actually number 7 when she had that monster run as Wonder Stardom champion. So seeing Sai at number 7 a few years ago and then Sai at number 3 this year, that's a big coup for us fans here in Stardom. Number 4 was Tiffany Stratton. And I know this one kind of got a lot of flack from the fan base. And I figured she would have been in the top 6 or 7 because she walked out of WrestleMania as women's champion. When you walk out of the biggest show of the year as one of the champions, you will always make the top 10 in any list. Number 5, Stephanie Vaquer. Boy, howdy, what a year she had.
Yes.
She won quite a bit. She had that great match with Io back at WrestlePalooza to win the vacant Raw Women's Championship. NXT champion, was North American champion, she crown jewel champion. I mean, she pretty much won every single thing. Number 6, Io Sky, also known as Io Shirai. I know I accidentally glossed over this. You talked about all the great women's wrestlers in NXT after the 4 Horsemen. Obviously, Asuka, Io, Kyrie. We have to add them in the mix because Io is just the way she's been able to transcend on American TV is just absolutely just considering the fact that she is like 5'4" and the fact that English is not her first language, but she connects with the biggest audience in the world. You absolutely have to give it there. Number 7, Athena. I figured she would have been in the top 10, the forever Ring of Honor champion. And one stat for me, again, for someone that grew up or that was lucky enough to be involved in Ring of Honor as long as I was, the fact that Athena has like almost twice as long as run as Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, Nigel McGuinness, Jay Briscoe, like that's really something. That's really something. Speaking of something, number 8, Suri. She's a freelancer. She is technically a freelancer, and she's doing some of her best work. Marigold World Champion, IWGP Joshi Champion, had a phenomenal match. I know it's not part of the evaluation period last week on Sendai Girls with Chihiro Hashimoto. Folks, take the time to watch that match. Number 9, Naomi. Obviously, Naomi had a great year. It's even have a better year because as much as I love wrestling, the thing I love more is family. So the fact that Naomi is creating life, good on her. Good on her. And number 10, the most over women's wrestler on the planet, Rhea Ripley, and probably top 4 or 5 biggest star in all of wrestling, one Rhea Ripley. So there is your top 10. Obviously, folks, you can buy this edition of PWI Women's 250 digital, and I believe it comes out on newsstands, physical copy December 2nd. Do I have that right, Kristen?
Yep, December 2nd. Yep.
There you go. There you go. Now, as far as that list goes, how do you guys how long does that take? Are you guys sitting in the office? Are you guys on Zoom meetings? I'm assuming everybody's in different parts of the country. There's a lot of emails going out. Like you guys have a vote. How does that get filtered down really into like maybe the top 15 to the top 10?
So there is a committee. Not everyone can always make, like, there's usually 2 meetings, right? And of course it's via Zoom because I can't travel to Philly. So we're all over the place. Pat's up in Canada, Warren's up in Canada, you got people over in California. You can't always, that would be great, but you can't do that. So it is via Zoom. With the women's list, it's typically 2, just because it's not super long. When I'm on the 500, sometimes it's just crazy. You don't always get through all 500. But with the women's list, it's 2. Not everybody can always make those. It's sort of one of those, it's like any meeting, like you got to get as many people as you can, but someone might always make it. But everyone gets a chance to look at the list. And they give their 2 cents. So, okay, well, why is this person this low? I have had, I'm not gonna say who because I don't want to ruin any fanfare or whatever. But I had said, why is this person so high? Sell me on it. But in the actual meetings, the idea is that we all try, at least most of us try to agree on where this person is. And we literally just go from 1 down. We just start at number 1. Most people will have their number 1 in mind, or I try to go in with my top 20. It never looks like that when we're done. Last year I had my top 5, and the top 5 made it, and I was so excited. I'm like, this is my top 5. Look at all this. So it never goes the way you want it to. But this top 4 at least was what I expected. And you always kind of have in the top 20, who's going to be in it. It just may not be all in that order that you think it's going to be in. And so this year it was fairly simple. You would think the 1 and 2 would have caused some big eruption in the meetings, but it really didn't. Everybody, me and somebody else had come in with Toni Storm as number 1, if only for the reason that she beat Mercedes at All In. And so Mercedes doesn't have that top belt, but at the end of it, we all agreed on Mercedes, and I was swayed, mostly that Mercedes has this global influence, right? So we just go down. I think the first meeting we went to 100. That's a 4-hour meeting.
Wow.
Sometimes it's longer, yeah. And then the second meeting was, I think, 5 hours. So this is not something that we just like, okay, let's put, Mizuki here and let's just go down. Like we don't take it that lightly. And especially the top 20, it usually takes the longest. And then, by the end of it, it's like me and a couple people via email. Because by the end of it, you're like, okay, not that they're so interchangeable, but the difference between this person and this person may be so little that now you're kind of getting to the meat of it. And a lot of the super indie women, some of the committee just are not aware of. And so there's a few of us that then get down to that bottom. And I'll say, even after the last meeting, that's not almost never how the list looks when it gets printed, because the bottom of the list, there are so many changes in and out. Like you get so many, and we can talk about high end here if you want to. But we get so many people in and out of the list, or we take a look at it and we're like, okay, well, why did we put this person so low? That doesn't make any sense. There was a couple years ago, I'm like, why is Mio Yamashita, why is she so low? Like, what are you doing here? And so then we switch it up. So it almost never looks the same with high end. So I'm not going to just blame Kevin, but Kevin does, we make fun of him because he does tinkle a lot with the list after we've already had our meetings. And he'll tell me what he's done, but I typically don't look at the list, the very last list, until I absolutely need to. And so in the middle of that tinkering, he just forgot to put high end back in. So it's happened before in the 500. And it's, it sucks, but it's because we care so much about this list that all this tinkering happens. We don't want to, we don't want to forget somebody. And we've had that problem where we didn't look at women in Australia hard enough, or women in Europe hard enough, these places where you just don't see a lot of the wrestling. So sorry, Hyan. She's such a wonderful lady. I love her so much. She messaged a bunch of us and said, "Are you guys okay?" She asked how we were, because we were getting so much flack over it. Really, Kevin, but
he owned up to it though, didn't he? I thought he went on. That's how I knew about it. Is he owned up to it. So it was just like, but that's so nice of her. Where it just really goes to show you like how much of a fan base she has, and she's going to continue to get. And obviously, she's been on AEW TV a little bit these past few weeks, so she's going to continue to get a bigger fan base. But that's really cool. That's not really cool. Well, watch what I'm saying. It's not really cool that you guys are getting flack, but it's really cool that people are like, how did you guys miss Hyan? How did you miss Hyan? And the fact that Kevin was like, guy, this is my bad. And he kind of just took the heat off you guys immediately. So I guess that had to be easy on you guys. Like, thanks, we know it's him. It's him.
I didn't do anything. And actually we noticed now, I mean, it's going to sound bad when I say this, but Hyan was trending, and which she might have been if we had forgot her. And I'm not saying you're welcome, Hyan, but it goes to show, I would never say that, but it goes to show that she does have this huge fan base that was like, what are you doing? And I'm going to be honest with you. When this whole Maya and Hyan thing went on, I went to go see where Maya and her were. And this is before I think it was before even released, I think, or like the night before or something like that. And I went and I'm like, where's Hyan? where is Hyen? And so I probably should have had some bells, but Hyen sometimes has a lot more intergender matches than she does women's. And so I just didn't really think twice about it. And that's on us. Not that we could have changed it at that point anyway, but that's on us.
Where did you have her at? Do you remember roughly? So maybe she's like 103. We can say right here she's 103A. Congratulations. She's
He said
103A.
well, I don't know he said it was the top third. So
Okay.
I can't tell you what exactly, but you're thinking like probably the top, I don't know, 80,
80.
like
Yeah.
that.
So
Yeah,
we'll say
somewhere in
she's
there.
81 and a half. We'll say she
Yes,
is.
there you go.
It really seemed like, Kristen, you did a great job spinning it. I don't even realize that you did it, but like you just put a positive on her not getting in, which is, oh, it's a heartbreaking thing. But the fact that she got recognized for that,
Yeah.
and you just put a positive spin on it. So technically, it was kind of, you made a really bad thing something good. And again, we
Yes.
just talked about like the storyline with Julie and Sherry back a few years ago. It's like, this is what was supposed to happen. There was a little bump in the road. Mistakes happen. Certain things happen. Hey, let's try to spin this in a positive way. And it clearly did. And look, there's a very good possibility that Hyen and Maya World, fingers crossed, will be signed to an AEW contract, because those two great wrestlers on that roster. Can you imagine like Maya World versus Mercedes, Hyen versus Jamie
Yeah.
Hayter, Hyen versus Megan Bain? I mean, there's a lot of potential there. So, and yeah, and it has happened. I remember a couple years ago, Naito got left off the
Yes, I was
list.
just gonna bring that up. Yeah, Naito. That was a big thing.
I think that a year or two ago, Hazuki got left off the list, which I think that, and it happens, folks. Mistakes happen. The fact that
Right.
Kevin owned up to it's like, and Hein was like, "Hey, we get it," and that's just so cool. I'm so glad that you brought that up, and our listeners were here. That the fact that like she privately reached out to you guys, like, I just want to make sure you guys are okay. That just really
Right.
goes to show you what
So
an
cute.
absolute sweetheart that she is. So, and again, we're only human. We're only human. Kristen, I have to ask you this because obviously we're a Stardom podcast, and everybody knew where I planted my flag on the number one wrestler. Now, I have no problem with Mercedes and Tony 1 and 2. I figured they would be 1, 2, and 3. But I was planted my flag on Saya Kamatani being number one. Was there anybody? You don't have to give any names. You can be yes or no if you like. Was there anybody that had Saya Kamatani as their number one?
I'll say the name because she's already said it. Lyric Swinton, who was essentially our Joshi expert, quote unquote. She knows so much more than I could ever speak on. I don't know if you've ever had her on, but that's somebody you need to have on. She came in with Saya, and she spit all the facts, right? That essentially came down to Saya is the draw in Japan. Like she is the wrestler. And I always think of back when Saya was this sweet, unassuming, just this little sweet, unassuming that, frankly, in my opinion, got kind of lost in the mid card, right? And now you see her, and she could come in without music on, and you're just drawn to her. It's just there's something about her that you're like, this is the woman, this is the wrestler, and I had Saya at number 3. And it's horrible to say, but it comes down to influence and that visibility. So unfortunately, right, Mercedes and Tony and AEW and WWE, they have TV. They have the American audience, the North American audience. And as sad as it is, that's really what comes down to this person versus this person. Suri could have been higher, right? But it's this person versus TV, or pay-per-view buys, you might even say, or Stardom's getting so much better. They really put a lot of focus on English now. Like they've shown some matches on YouTube for free where we're like, why would you give this away for free? Like that's insane. Or their pay-per-view structure has gotten so much better. Their website is now officially, you can go there and make your way through it easier. So Saya was at my number 3. Lyric had number 1. I would say most people had her at number 3. There was a little bit of fight between Saya and Tiffany at number 3, with one person. So the rest of us are trying to convince this one person, no, Saya, and eventually they caved in. Like, okay, fine, but Lyric knew all those, TV, all that stuff that really essentially came down to in and outside of the ring, why Saya was so great this year. And I'm telling you, again, Warren, my fiance, was just really not like you, Matt, right? Like knew of Joshi, but wasn't like ingrained. And he sees Saya on a card now, and it's like we're watching this. We're watching this. And especially with Azumi, right? Like we're watching this stuff. So I don't blame you for having her as number one. I didn't, but um you wouldn't go any lower than 3, in my opinion. Absolutely not.
No, my whole thing, and again, when it came out, I was like, it's probably Mercedes 1, Saya 2, but I had reasoning behind it. I know a lot of people were like, "Will you do a Stardom podcast?" And I was like, "Well, of course I'm good." Like that's like saying I'm going to go to dinner, I'm going to order something that I don't want. Like, no, I'm going to order something I want. Like the reason why I do a Stardom podcast is because I love Stardom. I'm ingrained
Right.
to Stardom. The reason why I wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning to watch these pay-per-views, and I'm like an 8-year-old kid on Christmas, is because
Yes.
I love Stardom. But my whole thing was, and again, I love Mercedes. I get it. I love Tony Storm. I get it. And a lot of my friends were like, Tony should, if they had, if there was going to be 1 and 2, don't you think Tony should have been number 1 because she beat Mercedes, and Mercedes has
Yeah.
never won the big belt on AEW, and obviously she has a shot this week. Well, this will come out after, but she has a shot this weekend to win the big belt. My whole thing is, I think the most important belt right now in wrestling is the red belt, the World of Stardom Championship, just because of the way how it's produced, the way the fact it's not hot potatoed all the time, the way that it's not treated as a gimmick, it's treated as something important. I made mention maybe about half an hour ago. Why are these ladies doing this to each other? It's because of the belt. The winner comes out with the belt and claim that they're number 1, where Mercedes has all these belts and it's doing phenomenal business for those independent companies. When she comes out with those belts and it's some random indies belt, it's just like their business has gone up.
Mhm.
The proof is in the pudding. The numbers don't lie. So it's like I get that. But Sai Kamatani, and as far as match quality goes, and again, that's so subjective, but there's no wrestler in this year, male or female, that's having better wrestlers than Sai Kamatani. And I'll say this: and I love Will Ospreay, I love Bandito, I love Okada, Hangman Adam Page is having a really good last 6 months. The
Yeah.
only other wrestler, in my opinion, that is even close to match quality than Sai Kamatani is Azumi. And the
Yeah.
only other one that's close to her is Io and Starlight Kid. So again, man, you better step it up because the women are kicking your butts. They're absolutely kicking your butts. But
Yes.
I think Stardom did an absolute genius thing, Kristen, when you just mentioned a few minutes ago. It's like, why are they putting this free on YouTube? Like they put their playoffs, their quarterfinals of the 5-star Grand Prix
Yes.
in Cork and Hall free on YouTube. And I literally told my buddies, I was like, guys, this is free. You need to watch this. For all of
Right.
you that complain, there's not enough wrestling going on my TV. It's more talky, which again, that's how they get their stories over. Like, oh man, the women only had 9 minutes on TV this week. It's a 3-hour show, and you will be
Yes.
absolutely blown. There's some of my favorite matches of the year were on that one show. So a lot of it, it's just like, why are they giving it away for free? As a business model, they make money on YouTube. And
Oh, yeah,
they're
right.
getting more and they're getting more people. They're getting more people to watch. So when that show was over and after 24 hours, when it tipped over at 250,000 views, they did well and they sold
Yeah.
out Cork and Hall. So they did well.
Yep.
So Kamatani, you have that on that level. You have thrown the fact that Kamatani had a match with Hanan, and it was the first women's match to be on American TV on a broadcast network in something like 50 years.
Mhm.
And I love Hanan, it's because of Kamatani. Kamatani's on all these talk shows. And I know Walker Stewart made the comment when he did English commentary on that match Kamatani had with Momo, saying whenever Kamatani's on this talk show, it's the highest ratings they do all year. So it's that worldwide influence that she's doing. That's why I staked my claim at number 1. And I had some of my friends were saying, well, you're just saying that because you have the Stardom podcast. And that's when I say to all my friends, how many Sai Kamatani matches did you watch this year? They may have seen the Tam All-Star Grand Queendom match. I have seen every Kamatani match, every Mercedes match, every Tony Storm match, every EO
Yeah.
match, not every Tiffany Stratton match because there's only 24 hours in the day. But anybody that has wrestled in Stardom, Julia, Kyrie, if you've wrestled in Stardom, I'm watching your stuff. Blake Monroe, Mariah May, I am watching your stuff. Saya Kamatani is the best wrestler in
Yeah.
wrestling this year, regardless of gender. Like, regardless of gender. So that's where I planted my flag on Kamatani on number 1. I will now know that we need to have Lyric on this show, and
Yes.
that me and her will buddy up as we're getting close to this time next year. So
Yeah.
this way, if they're still doing the Kamatani run, which is a very possibility Kamatani is still champion, at this time, because if it's not broke, don't fix it, because nobody in Stardom's 15-year history is drawing like her.
Hmm.
Maybe me and her will get our brainchild together and we will try to get her number one.
Yes.
The one thing you did mention, I don't know if I'm not sure, I don't know if you were working, if you were doing the women's 250 at the time, but you made mention how a lot of the one spots or two spots will go to AEW, WWE, and back in the day,
Mhm.
WCW, because of visibility. Sherry was number one a few years ago, and I
Yep.
thought it would have went to Bianca Belair, because Bianca Belair walked out of that WrestleMania as champion. And even me, if I'm like, man, I love my Stardom, but even if I got a vote, I would vote for Bianca Belair. But the fact that Sherry was one and they put her on the cover, Sherry was one, Kamatani was seven, and Starlight Kid was nine. Were you there? Were you working for PWI when
Yeah.
Sherry was the number one? Oh, if you
Yes,
do,
this is my sixth list. So I started doing this in 2020 when it just turned to 100, or no, 2 years after it turned to 100. But yeah, no, I was there for that. And that number one, number two conversation went over an hour. Just that. Which is, since I've been there, even with the 500 list, the longest conversation between number one and number two I've seen. I came in with Shuri. I would say it was about half and half.
good for
I
you.
think,
I just want to say good for you,
yeah.
because even I, who
Thank
do a Stardom podcast, and I love Sherry, she's one of my favorite wrestlers to watch ever. I would
Yep.
have been like, no, it's Bianca, because I know the way the men's 500 goes. But good for you on voting for Sherry. I apologize for interrupting. Continue, Kristen.
It's okay. Well, it was about half and half. And I think what it came down to was, and this is the case, I think anytime you have anyone have back-to-back covers or back-to-back number ones, which doesn't happen a lot. And it doesn't happen a lot because eventually your star starts to dim a tiny bit, right? Like you don't have, especially in WWE, you don't have, unless you're Roman Reigns, you don't have years and years of this bright star. And eventually it sort of goes to someone else. Um, it was so hard to go, but I had my stats, I had everything laid out. Bianca was my number two. And that's the thing, is nobody came in with a number, somebody else completely different. Everyone came in with Shuri and Bianca. And some of the individuals on this committee, I was surprised, because there are some people who just don't know Joshi that well, or don't know enough to go, okay, this person's definitely number two, and knew it without any of us coming through with that. I will I will say there was an email before we even got into it that said, bring your number one and number two, because it's gonna be hard. So we knew before even, and that will happen sometimes before we even get into the meeting. And even after we decided number one and number two, there was an email chain that went on forever, where we're like, okay, let's continue this. And at some point, I think Kevin went, enough. We've decided it. At some point, we got to cut and we got to move on. And that was where it was after an hour plus. It was sort of like, look, if we have to take a vote, we will, because there were one or two people who did not agree with Shuri at number one. They just couldn't get past it. And so that did come down to a vote. And the amount of excitement, though, I think for everybody in that committee, that this is the first Stardom person to top this list. And then you get a bunch of, was it three, right? Stardom women to be on the cover. That was the focus. I got chills. I felt proud of that. I felt this was, in my opinion, Sherry at number one was one of my best, quote unquote, career, um, you know, outcomes that I could have ever done. This is up there on, bell to bells getting some sort of recognition. This is up there, that I felt super proud of this, because honestly, like, who would have thought? And this was a really good issue for us fan wise. You thought Bianca Belair fans would have been like, what? But I think even at some point, most of those fans were like, okay, we get even just the historical significance of this. But that was a year that was so hard. And I wouldn't have blamed anybody for just not coming back the next year to the committee, because it got heated. Yeah.
I couldn't buy that issue fast enough, obviously, because Sherry was number one, and then you had Kamatani and Kid. They were all on the cover, and then
Yep.
a friend of the show, and just all around great person, Karen Peterson, had an
Yes.
article in that. And she's absolutely
She's
fantastic.
wonderful.
Kristen, before we move on, I did say we go about an hour, and usually when I talk about wrestling, I can be here the whole day.
Me too.
So obviously, I do want to talk about some of your. Obviously, you told me your favorite women's match of all time. So I do want to end it on some other of your favorite matches you've seen this year over the past few years. I will, and again, you can kind of be paso this question if you want, because our fans will absolutely yell at me if I don't ask this question. So, and again, I'm not putting the heat on you. I just need to know why. I'm looking at the
Oh,
list here, 250. We have Liv Morgan, number 12. I love Liv Morgan. You have Nia Jax, 13. Starlight Kid is 14. Can you just tell us why Starlight? Are you on my side on this? I was just like,
I am.
I thought Kid should have made the top 10. And then when I
I
saw her at
am.
14, and I was like, Nia Jax and Liv Morgan. Okay, so we can. You're with us then, okay?
Yes.
I don't. Okay, so you now again. So we're in agreement that she should be above Nia and Liv Morgan. And that's
Yes.
I'm not deteriorating Nia Jax and Liv Morgan. I'm just saying how fantastic Starlight Kid has been during the
Yes.
evaluation period. Wonder of Stardom champion, one of the best Wonder of Stardom champions of all time. Had was Artist of Stardom champion. Is drawing money, arguably the top babyface in the company right now, considering it's their best financial year that they've ever had. But do you agree with me? Would you put her in the top 10? Because I think I probably would have put her over Naomi. I would have put her over Rhea Ripley. I understand Rhea Ripley is the biggest women's star on the planet. I totally agree. But for the evaluation period, Rhea didn't have those monster wins as
Yeah.
Starlight Kid. So would you, when you came out with your list, was Starlight Kid in your top 10, or did she just miss?
She was my number 10. And I'm like, I love Naomi. Okay, let's make that very clear. Naomi was in my top 15, but I did not put her in the top 10. Simply because her title reign was very short. And I'm not going to punish anyone because they're pregnant, but the fact is that it just was very short. However, she had this really huge influence in her own way, right? Her heel turn worked out significantly well when you think about it. And this is the case, I think, what happened with us with the WWE women all together, how they ranked against each other, was that it was a really weird year for the title scene for WWE women, and that like everybody had it for like besides Tiffany Stratton, everyone had it for like a month. And they had very few defenses. And sure, the defenses were at like WrestleMania, but there would be like two. And it'd be like Io and Rhea were just fighting each other the entire time. So that was hard enough. I think personally, I thought Liv did a lot in the beginning, but then was not doing a lot towards the end. I would say the same for Nia Jax, that there was sort of this like, oh, well, they did a lot, but I would argue that that was in the beginning of the period where Starlight was throughout. The problem that we get with now this year was significantly different, but historically, the problem we get with Stardom women is there are so few singles matches. So when you look at the criteria, you're not getting, you don't count tag team, trios, factions, 8-woman matches. You don't count those. Now this year was significantly different because there was more focused on singles competition, but also there was just travel everywhere. Azumi was in every single promotion ever, so it's a little bit different this year, but it does always sort of in the history of this list discount them a little bit. It's the same thing with the luchadoras, is that it's like, the rule is 6 and 6, which is 6 matches within 6 months, six different months. So that's how a lot of like luchadoras ended up getting into this. But I would put Starlight Kid at number 10. I had Rhea above her, and then the top 8 was the top 8, in a little slightly different order. I thought Stephanie Vicaire was a little high, but yeah, no, I agree. I agree. But I'm a sucker for their belts, like, you know what I mean. And both of their belts are considered, well, their world belt, right, is recognized by PWI as a world belt. And that's, I think they were no, obviously WWE, but I think they were the first one outside of WWE that belt was considered by PWI a world belt. It's recognized as a world belt, which then counts more.
Are you talking about the World of Stardom Championship?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sure. Okay.
And even there's, even the secondary belt, right? The Wonder, if you call it secondary, is still recognized very highly, as opposed to like the US belt on WWE, or it's still recognized very well and very held to a very high esteem, which takes part in this. You know, when you look at all of these top women, they're holding world belts, and so that's also part of it. Is like, especially with the weekly rankings, when I help with those, is the secondary within the promotion belts are always going to go below the highest ranked belt unless there's something crazy happening. So you look at these women and you're like, yeah, okay, they've had top belts. So I get why they put Starlight Kid down there. I personally would have not. I would have not, but we are a committee.
Your team. Yeah,
Yes.
your team. And I always say, you know, when it comes to the World and Wonder, and I made mention it earlier, and I make mention all the time, I think they're the two most important belts in wrestling right now because, as you mentioned, the women's championship WWE was defended once or twice, and then
Yeah.
it hot potatoes where you can't really establish a champion. And again,
Right.
Shuri, 365 days when she was World of Stardom champion and made the number one. And Chris and I speak for the entire Stardom Cast fan base, and we thank you for making Shuri number one. We're going to give you a majority of the credit there. So
Yeah.
thank you for making
Okay. Yes, I'll take that. Yes,
we're gonna
Queen of PWI. Right?
we're gonna put you over. We're gonna put you over. But like, and
Yeah.
again, another thing, again, to a lot of my friends that don't watch Stardom, like, why do you put those belts in such high regard? And they only watch like WWE or AEW, and I'll
Mhm.
say, well, because of here are the matches, here's what they're fighting for, and here are the lineage of those belts. The red belt was held by Tony Storm. The red belt was held by Io, Kyrie, Julia. The white belt as well as Io, Kyrie, Julia. So all these names that you're seeing on TV were all held by, you know, they held the two biggest belts in Stardom, and speaking glowing terms to this day about, like, man, I was Wonder of Stardom champion. When I was World of Stardom champion, man, I had great matches. Like, granted, I was wrestling in front of 900 people in front of Cork and Hall, not 64,000 people here at, you know, at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, but they have such fond memories of their time in Stardom. So,
Yeah.
it's really great stuff, Chris. And again, I can speak to you forever about pro wrestling. We definitely have to have you back on.
Yes.
But before we go and before you plug your stuff, can you just give me what are some of your top favorite matches that you have seen this year? Because again, we're talking a lot about a list. I'm just curious on what was your personal. You know, you don't have to make a number, but like you have like 5 or 6 favorite matches, like off the top of your head that you've seen this year.
Oh my gosh, now you're putting it on me. Um, so I really do feel like they did Momo dirty. I want to put that out there that she won this Grand Prix, and then they did her dirty. So anything Momo did towards the end there was just absolutely phenomenal. Um, oh my gosh, I actually really, I mean, first off, Tony, I will say, is an incredible wrestler, and I'm not going to go, oh, it's because of Stardom, but Tony has wrestled just about anywhere you can think of, and it shows in her match qualities. I think Tony can bring out the best in anyone. Now, you could also say that about Mercedes. Mercedes pulled out a match of the year, in my opinion, with Chris Statlander. Um, but those two at All In, and I might be a little biased because I was there, but oh my gosh, talk about nobody breathing for the entire match. And then when Tony won, we were all stunned. We could not believe Tony retained. So that was one. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna be quite honest. I didn't watch a lot of WWE big matches.
Well,
Oh, you're putting a lot
like,
on me right now.
well, you mentioned Momo Nozumi from the 5-star finals. That's my second favorite match I've seen in wrestling all this
Oh,
year.
I'm sorry, not Grand Prix. That's my bad. I'm
No,
sorry.
you said 5-star Grand Prix, didn't you?
Oh, Grand. Yes. Okay. Okay.
No, you got it.
I'm
You're good.
tired.
Yeah.
It's
What do
like
you?
my fifth
I
thing
will
this
say,
week.
as soon as I tell you what my number one match is, you're going to be like, oh yes, how can I not include that one? My number one match I've seen this year, and maybe my all-time favorite female match of all time, Tam Nakano, Sai Kamatani, All-Star Grand
Oh,
Prix.
yes, you're so right.
It's either that or Mayu versus Io from, as far as my all-time favorites, Mayu versus Io from Year-End Climax 2016. Those are maybe my two favorite female matches of all time. The fact that we got Mayu versus Io again just about a month ago at Grand Destiny,
Yes.
never thought, very much like Okada and Tanahashi, like we're getting that again in the Tokyo Dome, which they've sold
Right.
out. Like, Oh my goodness. Oh my god. And the fact that we're going to be there, like myself, Rob, my wife, we're going to Japan
Oh,
for that
wow.
whole Dream Queendom to Wrestle Kingdom. Like
Jealous.
I'm like, what are the odds that this is our first trip to Japan and we're going to a sold out Tokyo Dome? But yeah, those ones are up there. Mayu versus Shuri from All Star Grand Queendom, same show.
Yep.
That one's up there. Shuri versus Suri. The third match was really good, but the first two, the one from Suriism and then the one from the Conversion, that one's up there. Same show, Conversion. I got to go with Wingori, Hanan, and Saida versus Soriano and Natsupoi. That
Mhm.
one's up there as well. But you mentioned Momo and Azumi. That's probably number two. But number one, it's just that pure emotion. First of all, the match was great. The story was great. But the way that ended, like Tam retiring and then her
Yeah.
and Saya Kamatani crying as their faces are like bleeding from all the punches and slaps they did to bust their noses and lips open. And then Tam just points to the sky and all of a sudden fades to black and then lights come back up and they're gone. It's just like feathers and like, oh my God, Tam's gone. And we haven't heard
I
anything from her in 7 months. It's crazy.
I love Tam. I was so sad when the announcement that she was leaving. So and that's why she's not on the list, by the way, is the retirement. But yeah, there's a lot of women on here from that are not on here from Stardom that I just am so bummed about. But and you look at her, and not to be super like stereotypical and biased, but you look at her and you're like, there's no way this woman can go. And I will never forget the cage match that she had with Natsupoi, and just these two women that you never thought would pull this out absolutely destroy each other on the rustiest cage I have ever seen in my entire life.
Pull that one from
And
the
I'm thinking,
80s.
don't touch this. You're gonna get tetanus. Like, yeah, you're right. I can't believe I forgot that match. That was incredible. She's incredible.
Yeah, there's so much great wrestling going around the horn. The fact that we don't have to wait 3 to 4 weeks like I did in the 90s to get it on VHS. It's all readily available. Again, Kristen, I cannot thank you. This was great. Definitely would love to have you back on. This was a
Yeah,
great conversation. Before I sign us off, is there anything that you want to plug? Your social medias, a magazine, a show, anything you'd like to plug? The floor is yours.
sure. So I mean, all the stuff I've been doing right now is really on PWI. The next issue is the tag team issue. It's my first year on the committee, so representing the women's tag teams. So know that they're there, and I'm sure you could probably guess on some of those who are there, Matt. But they're there. There's some high ones up there. I'm really excited about. We don't get a lot of women's tag teams that are super high, but there are this time, so look out for that. I'm doing a column in this one about the Europe scene, getting some quotes from European women wrestlers. You do not hear a lot about the Europe scene. You just don't. And then I also have a feature on tag team wrestling for women's wrestling for this upcoming year, as in this is the time really and it's focused on North America. So I'm sorry, man, but this is the time where tag team wrestling in North America, it's really coming up. It's coming. And yes, part of that's AEW, but not just AEW. So lots of women's wrestling as usual for me in PWI. So I'm really excited to have a feature that doesn't always happen, but we're coming. So just pay attention. Also make sure you go online, pwi/online.com. Get your digital one now. You can pre-order the print. Otherwise, like you said, it's on newsstands December 2nd.
I can already hear our fan base yelling, Wingori, Sorry Poi, Red Energy. Like, I'm sure.
I can't confirm or deny, but but you
Well,
know.
we know how that goes. However, I will say the Young Bucks have come on really, really strong at the end of this year, so I expect them to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
in the top 3 or 4. But again, Kristen, this was absolutely fantastic. Again, I mean, we'll have to have you back on talk about tag
Yeah.
team wrestling because I love tag. I know you're not focusing on the Joshis, but still, what's going on in WWE and AEW
Yeah.
and TNA is absolutely fantastic. So we'll definitely have to have you back on sometime soon. Folks, questions, comments, suggestions, anything you need from me, Matt Turner OF on the Instagram and the Twitter is the easiest, fastest, and best way to get a hold of me. Don't forget to follow our new social media platform over on Twitter at Talk Joshi 2025. where myself and Andy Hatter, we review everything outside of the Stardom and Marigold bubble, meaning Sendai Girls, Tokyo Joshi Pro, Surrealism, so on and so forth. So also, folks, if you want to get me a hold of me via the email system is thestardomcast22@gmail.com. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for another fantastic edition of the Stardom Cast. We greatly appreciate your support. Can't do without you, because like I always say, just not my podcast. It's our podcast, because we're all together. Everybody's different. Everybody's special.